Welcome to my dear students. Today's deliberation is about Become Final Year 6 Semester Fundamentals of Financial Management subject, in which the most important two subcomponents, that is the chapters of leverages and capital structure theory, which is coming under the third unit of your syllabus and which is very important also. So before going to start this particular video online class, we should start with leverages. So firstly, we will discuss leverages. After finishing leverages, we will start capital structure decisions. So what is actually leverage? The term leverage refers to a relationship between two interrelated variables with reference to a business firm. These variables may be cost, outputs, sales, revenue, earnings before interest and taxes, earnings per share, etc. In financial analysis, leverage reflects the responsiveness or influence on one variable over some other financial variables. It helps in understanding the relationship between any two variables. In the leverage analysis, the emphasis is on the measurement of relationship of two variables rather than on measuring these variables. So, leverage normally, we can say that leverage allows us to accomplish certain things which are otherwise not possible. Leverage refers to an increased means of accomplishing some purpose. So, leverage can be defined as percentage change in one variable divided by the percentage change in some other variable. Leverage, the word leverage comes from the word lever, and as the word or name says, leverage means we have to compare the percentage change, one in the numerator, one we should put it into the denominator also. We have to find the percentage change in one variable with respect to another variable. This is called leverage. The leverage analysis reflects as to how responsiveness is the dependent variable to a change in the independent variable. So algebraically we can say that leverage equals to percentage change in dependent variable divided by percentage change in independent variable. Suppose if I am taking an example, a firm increased its sales promotion expenses from 5,000 to 6,000, that is an increase of 20%, yes or no? If one particular expenditure was 5,000, now it's increased up to 6,000, means 1,000 increases, and 1,000 divided by 5,000 into 100, absolutely percentage change will be how much? How much percentage? 20%, yes or no? So this result in the increase in number of units sold from 200 to 300. That is an increase of 50%. Yes or no? The leverage may be defined as leverage equals to percentage change in dependent variable divided by percentage change in independent variable. And this particular example, sales promotion expenses increase from 5,000 to 6,000. That is 20% increase. Similarly, number of output sold increased from 200 to 300. That is 50% increase. So our leverage category is 50% divided by 20%, absolutely 2.5. Our leverage is 2.5. This means that percentage increase in number of units sold is 2.5 times that percentage change in sales promotion expenses. The operating profit of the firm is a direct consequence of the sales revenue of the firm, and in turn operating profit determines the profit available to the equity shareholders. The functional relationship between sales revenue and earnings per share can be established through operating profit. As I have already explained many times in the classrooms that first sales minus variable cost equals to contribution minus fixed cost, we find profit before tax or earnings before interest and taxes. Then we have to deduct fixed interest charges, we find earnings before tax and earnings before tax and preference dividend. After finding this, we have to deduct tax rate from this. After deducting tax, we find earnings after tax but before preference dividend. And after finding this, we have to deduct preference dividend from this. After finding after deducting preference dividend from earnings after tax but before preference dividend, we have to find the amount available for equity shareholders. We can say that earnings available for equity shareholders. and these earnings available for equity shareholders can be divided by the number of equity shares available in the company. After dividing this, we have to find out our earnings per share. So this is called EBIT and EPS analysis. Normally, the EBIT level depends upon the level of sales volume, and the EPS depends upon the level of EBIT. Relationship between sales revenue and earnings before interest and taxes is defined as operating leverage, and the relationship between earnings before interest and tax and EPS is defined as financial leverage. The direct relationship between sales revenue and earnings per share can also be established by combining the operating leverage and financial leverage, and this is called composite leverage. So, three things in leverage: one is operating leverage, one is financial leverage, and one is combined leverage. So, under operating leverage, if the relationship is established between sales revenue and earnings before interest and taxes, the leverage we found is called what? Operating leverage. Similarly, if any relationship is between earnings before interest and taxes and earnings per share, that particular relationship we can say that it is called financial leverage. Similarly, and compositely, if the total establishment of relationship is between sales as well as earnings per share, we can say in compositely it is called combined leverage or composite leverage. Okay. So this is all about the basic characteristics part of leverage. Now coming to one by one, first operating leverage. When the sales increases or decreases, the EBIT also changes. The operating leverage measures the relationship between sales revenue and EBIT. Or in other words, it measures the effect of change in sales revenue on the level of EBIT, so that the operating leverage is calculated by the following formula as percentage change in EBIT divided by percentage change in sales. So we have to find out our operating leverage by applying the following formula as percentage change in EBIT divided by percentage change in sales. So the operating leverage denotes that EBIT level increases or decreases in direct proportion to increase or decrease in sales level. So this is due to the fact that there is not any fixed cost and total cost is variable in nature. So impliedly the profit level, that is the EBIT, varies in direct proportion to the sales level. So EBIT varies in direct proportion to sales level. So this is all about your operating leverage. Degree of operating leverage. So degree of operating leverage is, the operating leverage is percentage change in EBIT as a result of percentage change in sales. A positive degree of leverage means the firm is operating at a level higher than the break-even level, and both the EBIT and sales will vary in same direction. A negative degree of operating leverage means that the firm is operating at a level lower than the break-even level. So now coming to the category of significance of operating leverage. Analysis of operating leverage of a firm is very useful in financial management. It helps the impact of changes in sales or operating income. A firm having higher degree of operating leverage can experience a magnified effect on EBIT for even a small change in sales level. Higher degree of operating leverage can dramatically increase the operating profits, but if there is decline in sales level, EBIT may be wiped out and a loss may be operated. As explained earlier, the operating leverage depends on fixed costs. If the fixed costs are higher, the higher would be firm's operating leverage and its operating risks. If operating leverage is high, that automatically means that the break-even point would also be reached at a higher level of sales. Also, in the case of higher operating leverage, the margin of safety would be low. Therefore, it preferred to operate sufficiently above break-even point to avoid the danger of fluctuation in sales and profits. This is all about your operating leverage. Now coming to the next category, that is financial leverage. The financial leverage measures the relationship between the earnings before interest and taxes and earning per share, and it reflects the effect of change in EBIT on the level of earnings per share. The financial leverage measures the responsiveness of EPS to the change in EBIT and is defined as percentage change in EPS divided by percentage change in EBIT. It's very simple. Financial leverage is also known as trading on equity, and financial leverage is calculated by applying the following formula as percentage change in EPS divided by percentage change in EBIT. Or we can say that EBIT divided by EBIT minus I. I means interest charges. So, significance of financial leverage. Planning for capital structure, profit planning. These are the two important significances. In the capital structure is concerned with the raising of long-term funds both from shareholders and long-term creditors. Financial manager has to decide about the ratio between fixed cost funds and equity share capital. The effects of borrowing on the cost of capital and financial risk have to be discussed before selecting the final capital structure. Similarly, if the EPS is affected by the degree of financial leverage, if the profitability of the concern is increasing, then the fixed cost funds will help in increasing the availability of profits for equity shareholders. Financial leverage is important for profit planning also. So these are the two important significances of financial leverage. Now coming to the next category, that is composite leverage. Both the financial and operating leverage magnify the revenue of the firm. Operating leverage reflects the income which is the result of production. On the other hand, the financial leverage of the result of financial decisions. The composite leverage focuses the attention on increased income of the concern. The risk factor should be properly assessed by the management before using the composite leverage. The high financial leverage may offset against low operating leverage and vice versa. So the degree of composite leverage is nothing. It is just the multiplication of degree of operating leverage and degree of financial leverage. It's the product of operating leverage and financial leverage. So the degree of composite leverage we can find out by applying the following formula, that percentage change in earnings per share divided by percentage change in sales, or composite leverage equals to operating leverage into financial leverage. So composite leverage, degree of composite leverage short known as DCL, degree of operating leverage short known as DOL, degree of financial leverage is short known as DFL. So we can conclude that DCL means degree of composite leverage is equals to DOL into DFL, means degree of composite leverage equals to degree of operating leverage into degree of financial leverage. These are all about the basic important theoretical aspect of leverage of the chapter leverage. So hope you all should understand and enjoy this leverage chapter video. Now coming to the next category, next segment of our this particular video, this is capital structure. It's very important. Capital structure. In order to run and manage the company, funds are needed right from the promotion stage of to end. Finances play an important role in the company's life. So, if funds are inadequate, the business suffers, and if the funds are not properly managed, the entire organization suffers. It is therefore necessary that correct estimate of the current and future needs of the capital to be made to have an optimum capital structure. The capital structure is made up of debt and equity securities, refers to permanent financing of the firm. It is composed of long-term debt, preference share capital, and shareholders' funds. So, according to Jansten Board, capital structure of a company refers to the composition or makeup of its capitalization, and it includes all long-term capital resources, that is, loans, reserves, shares, and bonds. So these are all about your most important definition of capital structure, meaning and concept of capital structure. Now coming to next part, which is capitalization, capital structure, and financial structure. Capitalization means it's a quantitative aspect of financial planning of an enterprise, while capital structure is concerned with qualitative aspect. Capitalization refers to total amount of securities issued by a company, while capital structure refers to the kinds of securities and the proportionate amounts that make up capitalization. Similarly, for raising long-term finances, a company can issue three types of securities, that is equity shares, preference shares, and debentures. A decision about the proportion among these types of securities refers to the capital structure of the enterprise. Means how much investment from equity shares, how much from preference shares, and how much from debentures that is purely depending upon the company's financial matters, and this company's financial matter is called capital structure decisions. Okay. And financial structure means the entire liability side of the balance sheet. In the words of Neymers and Grunwald, financial structures refers to all the financial resources marshaled by the firm, short as well as long term, and all forms of debt as well as equity. So financial structure generally composed of specific percentage of short term debt, long term debt, and shareholders fund. Normally, capitalization is the total composition of the capital structure part, and capital structure is the amount of proportionate mix of capitals involved in the company, and financial structure is normally the liability side of the balance sheet. Okay, now coming to forms of capital structure. There are various forms of capital structure. We can use only equity shares in our company. We can use equity and preference share capital in our company. We can use equity, preference, and debentures in our company, or we can use equity shares and debentures in our company. So there are basically four important forms of capital structures. Now, what are the factors determining the capital structure decisions? This is very important. From theoretical aspect, question may come from this part. Factors determining the capital structure. Number one, financial leverage. The use of long-term fixed interest-bearing debt and preference share capital along with equity share capital is called financial leverage. The use of long-term debt magnifies the earning per share if the firm yields a return higher than the cost of debt. Earning per share also increases with use of preference share capital, but due to the fact that interest is allowed to be deducted while computing tax, the leverage impact of debt is more. Number two, growth and suitability of sales. The capital structure of a company is highly influenced by the growth and stability of its sales. If the sales are expected to remain fair stable, it can raise a higher level of debt. Stability of sales ensures that the firm will not face any difficulty in meeting its fixed commitments of interest payment and payments of debts. If sales are highly fluctuating, it should not employ debt financing in its capital structure. Third, cost of capital. Cost of capital refers to the minimum required rate of return expected by its suppliers or the cut-off rate of capital expenditures. Capital structure should also provide for minimum cost of capital. Usually, debt is cheaper source of finance compared to preference and equity. Preference capital is cheaper than equity because of lesser risk involved. Fourth one, cash flow ability to service the debt. A firm which shall be able to generate larger and stable cash inflows can employ more debt in its capital structure as compared to one which has unstable and lesser ability to generate cash inflows. Whenever a firm wants to raise additional funds, it should estimate project its cash inflows to ensure the cover of fixed charges. So we have to ensure how much cash flows ability to service our debt capital. Fifth one, nature and size of the farm. Nature and size of the farm also influences the capital structure. A public utility concern has different capital structure as compared to manufacturing concern. Public utility concerns may employ more debt because of stability and regularity of their earnings. Small companies have to depend upon own capital as it is very difficult for them to raise long-term loans on reasonable terms. Sixth, control. Whenever additional funds are required, the management of the firm wants to raise the funds without any loss of control over the firm. In case funds are raised through the issue of equity shares, the control of existing shares are diluted. Preference shareholders and debenture holders do not have the voting rights from the point of view of control. Debt financing is recommended. 7. Flexibility. Capital structure of a firm should be flexible. It should be capable of being adjusted according to the top needs of the changing conditions. A firm should arrange its capital structure in such a way that it can substitute one form of financing by other form of financing. Redeemable preference share capital or convertible debentures may be preferred on account of flexibility. Number 8. Requirement of investors. It is necessary to meet the requirement of both institutional as well as private investors. When debt financing is used, investors who are overcautious prefer safety investment. So debentures would satisfy such investors. Investors who are less cautious in approach will prefer preference share capital. 9. Capital market conditions. The choice of securities is also influenced by the market conditions. If share is depressed, the company should not issue equity share capital as investors should prefer safety. In case of a boom period, it would be advisable to issue equity share capital. Number 10, asset structure. If fixed assets continue a major portion of total assets of the company, it may be possible for the company to raise more of long-term debts. Number 11, period of financial. If finance is required for time period that is 7 years, debentures should be prepared. If funds are needed for permanent basis, equity share capital is more appropriate. Number 12, purpose of financing. If funds are required for productive purposes, debt financing is feasible as interest can be paid out of the profits generated from the investment. Number 13, cost of flotations. The cost of financing a debt is generally less than cost of floating equity and hence it may pursue the management to raise debt financing. Number 14, personal considerations. Management which is experienced and very enterprising does not hesitate to use more of debt in their financing as compared to less experienced and conservative management. Number 15, corporate tax rule. High rate of corporate taxes on profits compels the companies to prefer debt financing because interest is allowed to deduct while computing tax profits. This is all about the 15 most important points that how to determine your capital structure decisions. So you have to mock up. It's also given in your book also. Okay. Now coming to the next part, the most important segment of capital structure, that is theories of capital structure. Problem may come from the forms of capital structure and theories of capital structure. Different kinds of theories have been propounded by different authors to explain the relationship between capital structure and cost of capital and value of the firm. The important theories are net income approach, net operating income approach, traditional approach, and Modigliani and Wheeler approach. In discussing the theories of capital structure, the following assumptions have to be used. You have to assume the following assumptions. Number one, there are only two sources of finance, that is equity and debt. Number two, there would be no change in investment decisions. Third, that the firm has a policy of distributing the entire profits among the shareholders, implying that there is no retained earnings. Fourth, the operating profits of the firm as given and not expected to grow. Fifth, the business risk complexion of the firm is given and is not affected by the financing mix. Number six, there is no corporate and personal taxes. Okay. So, firstly, net income approach. According to Durant, this theory states that there is a relationship between capital structure and the value of the firm, and therefore the firm can affect its value by increasing or decreasing the debt portion in the overall financing mix. This approach is based on the following assumptions: that the total capital requirement of the firm is given and remains constant. The cost of debt is less than the cost of equity. Both cost of debt and cost of equity remains constant and increases in financial leverage. That is, use of more and debt financing in the capital structure does not affect the risk perception of the investors. The line of argument in favor of net income approach is that the portion of debt financing in capital structure increases, the portion of an expensive source of funds increases. This results in the decreases in overall cost of capital, leading to an increase in the value of the firm. The reason for assuming cost of debt less than cost of equity are that interest rates are usually lower than the dividend rates due to the element of risk and the benefit of tax as interest is or deductible expenses. The total market value of the firm on the basis of net income approach is V equals to S plus D. V stands for total value of the firm, A stands for market value of equity, and D stands for market value of debt. So how to calculate S, market value of equity? Market value of equity is earnings available for the equity shareholders divided by cost of equity. And after finding this, you have to add with the market value of debt and you find the total value of the firm. Similarly, under NI approach, net income approach, how to calculate overall cost of capital? Overall cost of capital, shortened known as KO, and it is calculated by applying the following formula as EBIT divided by B. And you should go through some illustrations given in your book under net income approach, and you have to very much clear. So it is evident that with the increase in debt financing, the value of the farm has increased and the overall cost of capital has decreased. So this is all about your net income approach. Now coming to the second category, that is net operating income approach. Under net operating income approach, it is shortly known as NOI approach. It is opposite to net income approach. According to net operating income approach, the market value of the farm depends upon the net operating profits or earnings before interest and taxes and the overall cost of capital. The financing mix or the capital structure is irrelevant and doesn't affect the value of the farm. The net operating income approach makes the following assumptions: that the cost of debt is taken as constant, the overall cost of capital of the farm is also taken as constant, the farm capitalizes the total earnings of the farm to find out the value of the farm as a whole. The use of more and more debt in capital structure increase the risk of the shareholders and thus results in the increase in cost of equity capital, that is KE. The increase in KE is such as to completely offset the benefits of employing the cheaper debts. So under net operating income approach, the value of the farm is calculated by applying the following formula as V equals to EBIT divided by KO. E stands for market value of the farm. EBIT stands for earnings before interest and taxes. KO stands for overall cost of capital. The market value of equity or residual value can be calculated as S equals to V minus D, and the cost of equity is calculated by applying the following formula as EBIT minus interest divided by V minus D. So it's a reversible approach of net income approach. Under that, V equals to S plus D. Here S equals to V minus D. So this is the reversible opposite approach of net income approach. Thus financing mix is irrelevant and doesn't affect the value of the farm. The value of the farm remains for all types of debt equity mix, since there will be change in the risk of the shareholders as a result of change in debt equity mix. Therefore, the cost of equity will be changing linearly with change in debt proportion. So this is all about your net operating income approach. Now coming to the third category, that is traditional approach. Under traditional approach, it is also known as intermediate approach, which is the compromise between these two extremes, net income approach and net operating income approach. According to this theory, the value of the farm can be increased initially or the cost of capital can be decreased by using more debts, as the debt is the cheaper source in finance than equity. Thus, the optimum capital structure can be reached by the proper debt equity mix. Beyond a particular point, the cost of equity increases because increased debt increases the financial risk of the equity shareholders. The advantages of cheaper debt and the point of capital structure is offset by increased cost of equity. After this, there comes a stage when the increased cost of equity can be offset by advantage of low cost debt. Thus, the overall cost of debt decreases up to a certain point, remains more or less unchanged for moderate increase in debt thereafter, and increases or rises beyond a certain point. So, thus, as per the traditional approach, a farm can be benefited from moderate level of leverage when the advantages of using debt outweighed the disadvantages of increasing cost of equity. So, the overall cost of capital is a function of financial leverage. The value of the farm can be affected by the judicious use of debt and equity in capital structure. So, this is your traditional approach. Now coming to the next category of theories of capital structure, which is very important, which is most important, that is Modigliani and Miller approach, shortly known as M and M approach. Under M and M approach or M and M model, which was presented in 1958 on the relationship between leverages, cost of capital and value of the farm. So M and M approach is based on leverage, cost of capital and your capital structure and your value of the farm. Three things. One is leverage, one is cost of capital, one is value of the farm. The model emphasizes that under a given set of assumptions, the capital structure and its compositions has no effect on the value of the farm. There is nothing which may be called optimal capital structure. The model is based on the following assumptions. The capital markets are perfect and the complete information is available to all the investors free of cost. The securities are infinitely visible. Investors are rational and well informed about risk return of all the securities. The personal leverage and the corporate level of perfect substitute. On the basis of above assumptions, the Modigliani and Miller model derived that the total value of the firm is equal to the capitalized value of the operating earnings of the firm. The total value of the firm is independent of the financial mix, with the cut-off rate of investment decisions of the firm depends upon the risk class to which the firm belongs and thus is not affected by the financing pattern of this investment. So, the Modigliani and Miller model argues that if two funds are alike, all respect except that they differ in respect of their financing pattern and their market value, then the investors will develop the tendency to sell the shares of the overall value of the firm and to buy shares of the undervalued firm. This buying and selling pressure will continue till the two firms have same market value. So, the arbitrage process refers to undertaking by a person of two related actions or steps simultaneously in order to derive some benefits. Example, buying by a speculator in one market and selling the same at the same time in some other market. The benefit from the arbitrage process may be in any form. Increased income from same level of investment or same income from lesser investment. So, when the corporate taxes are assumed to exist, theories of relevance. One is corporate taxes are not exist, and one is corporate taxes are exist. In the absence of taxes, the theory proves that the cost of capital is not affected by change in the capital structure, or say that debt equity mix is irrelevant in the determination of total value of the firm. The reason argued is that though debt is cheaper to equity with increased use of debt as a source of finance, the cost of equity, the overall cost of capital remains constant. The theory's emphasis on the fact that the firm's operating income is determinant of its total value. The theory further propounds that beyond a certain limit of debt, the cost of debt increases due to increased of financial risk, but the cost of equity falls, thereby again balancing the equity costs. In the opinion of Modigliani and Miller, two identical firms in all thereby again balancing of two identical firms in all respect except their capital structure cannot have different market values or cost of capital because of arbitrage process. So this is all about your theories of irrelevance, that is when there is no corporate taxes. But when there are corporate taxes assumed to be exist, this is called theories of relevance. Modigliani and Miller, in their article of 1963, have recognized that the value of the firm will increase, the cost of capital will decrease with the use of debt on account of deductibility of interest charges for tax purposes. So the optimum capital structure can be achieved by maximizing the debt mix of the equity of the firm. So according to Modigliani and Miller approach, the value of the firm unlevered can be calculated as value of unlevered firm equals to earnings before interest and taxes divided by overall cost of capital. If there is tax rate, so 1 minus t is extra multiplied. So value of unlevered firm is EBIT divided by KO whole into 1 minus tax rate, and the value of levered firm is value of unlevered firm plus market value of debt. So this is all about our Modigliani and Miller approach. So these are all about various theories of capital structures, forms of capital structure, patterns of capital structures, determinants of capital structures. So this is all about your two subjects, two chapters, leverage and capital structures. Hope you all should enjoy this particular video, online class, and please you should uh, like, share, comment, and subscribe my YouTube channel because I will provide more and more important videos, more and more examination matters, and exam is knocking at your door. And also, in this pandemic COVID-19 situation, hope you all are well and safe. Your family, friends, relatives, all are well and safe. Always use masks and hand sanitizers. Without having any emergencies, should not go to outside. So this is my humble request to all of you. So please be concentrate on your studies and happy reading and best wishes. Have a good day. Have a nice day. Okay, thank you. Bye.